Oh, you should have heard it. I was singing. I don't know the song though. I mean, I know the song. I don't know which song it is. What song it's called. Hi everybody. What the song is called. Not what song it's called. It's yeah, it's off of Abbey Road. It's part of that whole thing that happens on the second half of Abbey Road, you know, the B side, we used to call it. People used to call it. Hi. All right. I'm here with you now. Hold on. No longer on the B side of Abbey Road. I am not assuming that somebody is going to do the roll call. You guys are already talking about the Mac you want. That's kind of funny. How about a compromise? A 27-inch MacBook Pro. I love that idea. I want to add that now. Putting it right there. I can't see what it's a compromise between though, because unfortunately I missed it. Oh, there's John with the roll call. Hank, Matthew, other Matthew, Brian, John, who of course is taking roll. Webb, Donna, Paul, Eugene, Chuck, Nate, David, Roger, and Eugene again, or another Eugene? 2 Matthews, 2 Eugenes. No waiting. I need to see a Eugene. I'm sorry, Eugene's busy, but we do have this other Eugene. Full service. No other Kenzo. I got to think about that. Right, you guys want to do a show? Let's do a show. What do you say? Got a new chair. So if I look different, it's because I've got a new chair. Right, here we go. Making a better Mac. It is Friday, the 15th of January, 2021, and this is macOS Ken Live. Hi, everybody. Welcome into the last one of these for this week. It is macOS Ken Live. It is the last show of the week. It is the last show of the week. This is show number 16 for the week. Counting them down, ticking them off, all that stuff. I'm Ken Ray, by the way. I forgot to mention that, I think. Host of macOS Ken and this offshoot show, macOS Ken Live. macOS Ken comes out every morning, Monday through Friday, barring incident or time away. macOS Ken Live is 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern, Monday through Friday, sometimes talking over things that we've already talked about on macOS Ken, other times talking about things coming up on the next day's macOS Ken, and still other times talking about things that are not going to be talked about on macOS Ken, such as today. We will get to that in a moment. The second half of today's show, I got a fantastic email from somebody with thoughts on Apple Car. We've been talking a lot. Peter Cohen and I talked a couple of days this week. One day was devoted to Apple Car. One day we brought up Apple Car again on In a Few Minutes. And somebody wrote in about that and kind of blew my mind with their thought on Apple Car. So we'll do that in the second part of the show. Let me say really quickly, too, I got a few great emails yesterday that I really appreciate. I also got like one email that I got no use for at all, but because it was kind of full of bile, not towards me, just kind of like full of bile. It's like somebody put their spleen in an email and sent it. Thank you. Probably I'm going to end up keeping the emails that I got kind of personally because they meant a lot to me, and I don't know that there might be 1 or 2 points that I can pull out, so maybe we'll do that next week. But to the people, because I know yesterday I said, write to me, and people did. Thanks. I appreciate it. The stuff you had to say was insightful and touching, I would say, in some cases. But I'm not going to talk about that today because I got to think about Apple Car. And I'm kind of enjoying pulling my head out of it and talking about other stuff, like the big topic for today. Oh my goodness. So Ming-Chi Kuo, TF International analyst Ming-Chi Kuo hit with a report yesterday, followed by a Me Too report from Bloomberg's Mark Gurman. I feel kind of bad because I feel certain that Mark Gurman was actually working on a story. and he was looking to put it all together and craft it and make it a thing that probably would have blown the doors off everybody or everything, except that Ming Chi Kuo hit about 10 minutes earlier or a day earlier or something like that. They both came out yesterday and said, hey, here are our predictions for the new Macs coming this year, because they're predicting fairly big changes for the new Macs coming this year. We will start with Ming Chi Kuo because, he started the whole thing. Headline from Apple Insider: redesigned MacBook Pro models with MagSafe, no touch bar, and more ports are coming in the third quarter of this year. That's not the exact headline. I'm paraphrasing. That's too many words for a headline, unless you're Business Insider. Anyway, Ming Chi Kuo is predicting 2 new MacBook Pro models with an all-new design factor, he says. All-new design, which it doesn't really sound like would be all new. It just sounds like it would be a change from what we've got, but we'll get to that. First of all, he's expecting a 14-inch and a 16-inch model. A new flat edge look. Oh, I guess we'll get to it now. A new flat edge look that's more in line with the company's modern design language. See also the iPad Pro circa 2018 and the iPhone 12 circa now. Although, didn't the iPhone 4 also have that sort of flat design feel? And didn't the old MacBooks have that sort of flat design feel? Fewer rounded edges back in the day. Rounded corners, but not as much in the way of rounded. Anyway, I don't think you can say it's all new if you're going to go back to the way you were, but that's cool. That's fine. Whatever. Great. It's going to look a little bit different. MagSafe is coming back. I love this idea. If it's true, I love this idea because while it is neat that I can just, plug in my USB-C into any of the 4 ports and have it be okay, I have nearly pulled my computer off the table so many times, just like getting up to go do something, and it gets caught on my ankle. I miss MagSafe because, MagSafe would go flying, but your computer would stay right where it was. So I'm really loving that idea. It's kind of weird to think, though, that they would do MagSafe where they're calling what's happening with the phone MagSafe. I mean, I guess technically it's the same sort of thing in that, it's magnetic and it pulls away quickly and it charges, but it's weird to have that, It's like when Microsoft had the Microsoft Surface, which was the giant table, and then they introduced the Microsoft Surface, which was their tablet thing. Technically, I guess, kind of the same thing, but weird to reuse that. Ming Chi Kuo says the OLED touch bar is going away. Physical function buttons will come back instead. It's weird. I had no idea how much people hated the touch bar. I wonder, I think it was Peter Cohen actually said on Twitter earlier today that he's fine seeing the touch bar go. The only people who ignore the touch bar more than users are developers. Now, I use it for things like sometimes in the middle of recording macOS Ken, which is a fully scripted show. I'll realize I didn't underline something or I didn't italicize something, and I'll select it. And with the touch bar, I'll go ahead and italicize it right there in the middle of my read and able to continue, because I turn that back into a newsletter that goes out to some of the Patreon people. That script, that is. So I use it for things like that. I wonder if users would not ignore the touch bar as much if developers didn't ignore the touch bar as much. Personally, I do like the physical keys, the physical function keys, which of course would be coming back, as this says. I don't hate the touch bar, though. The one time I hate it, and I have a friend who wrote to me about probably a year before I got my 2018 MacBook Pro. I didn't have a touch bar yet. And he was like, yeah, I've got fat fingers and I hate it. I hate it. He doesn't really have fat fingers, but when he's typing, he'll hit the touch bar and suddenly his computer's off doing something else. I have had that happen a few times. And it's frustrating when it happens, but maybe if somebody gave, the touch bar more functionality, more people would like it. I have one friend who absolutely loves it. She says that, she opens up a Safari menu or a new Safari page, and I didn't realize this until she said it. All of your favorites are then displayed in the touch bar, so you can quickly just tap the one you want and go to it. That's a neat feature that I didn't even realize was there. And I've had this computer for 2 years now. So I don't know. He says it's going away. We'll see what happens. He also says that machines will have a wider variety of ports Indications are that that will eliminate the need for dongles. Got an email from somebody, and it may actually be in the feedback coming up in a little bit. Got an email from somebody who was like, "Well, I already bought all the dongles." I did find myself wondering, and I know that design choices happen years ahead of time, or generally speaking, happen years ahead of time, but a lot of people went out and bought Macs earlier last year now, when we all went inside and started doing work from home and school from home and all that stuff, right? I wonder if a lot of people bought the Macs, took them home, and then tried to plug their headset in, that they were using for their Zoom calls and couldn't because their headset was USB. I wonder if a lot of people, if they came up across the thing where all of a sudden all of these new people who haven't been living in the Apple ecosystem are buying these machines and getting them home and finding out they can't plug a freaking thing into it because their stuff isn't that modern. Kind of wonder if the reason for more ports is, to accommodate those people, because there are still more of those people coming. I can't remember who it was we talked about yesterday, but we talked yesterday about the fact that the Mac is up. Mac sales were up 8.5%. I think it was Cowen and Company. Mac sales were up 8.5% last year. They're still expected to be up 2.5% this year. That's on top of the, that's over and above the 8 whatever last year, right? So you're going to have lots more people coming to the Mac. What Apple always says is 50% of them came for the first time. I would assume that number stays at least that, or maybe even goes up a bit more. And all those people are going to try to plug their stuff in. There's no place to do it. Maybe this is driven by that. I also saw somebody say that a lot of the changes they're talking about are just freeing us from the design choices imposed by Johnny Ive, which I thought was kind of funny because there was a time that he could do no wrong. And then one day he could. Might have been the butterfly keyboard day. I'm not sure. As far as the inside of the machine, Ming-Chi Kuo says Apple will move the new models to heat pipe thermal designs similar to the current 16-inch MacBook Pro, enabling more headroom for high-performance, high-heat chips, which is kind of funny because he also says there aren't going to be any Intel versions of these machines. So how high heat will the high heat be if we're talking about the 5 nanometer processors? One assumes also that we're not talking about the M1, but I think we get to that in a moment. Mac Rumors did run a piece highlighting Mark Gurman's stuff for Bloomberg. I'll run through some of what he's expecting really quickly. He also calls for the return of MagSafe, which he says will allow for faster charging speeds. I'm okay with the charging speed as long as it doesn't, as long as pulling on the cable doesn't pull my computer off the, table. But, I'll take faster speeds too. He says that USB-C stays. Now, his indication is that it's still the 4 USB-C ports. I assume that means he's not looking for Apple to replace any of those ports with other types of ports, but, it's not 100% clear. He says the displays will be brighter and higher contrast. He says it'll have Apple Silicon because, duh. Obviously, Ming-Chi Kuo didn't spell that out in the thing I just told you about, but it's implied if there are no Intel versions, well, it's going to be Apple Silicon, isn't it? He says the look will stay similar to the current models with minor design changes. So it doesn't sound like he's on the whole, flat on all edges thing. He also says that Apple has tested versions of MacBook Pro without the Touch Bar, which means he's not convinced that the Touch Bar is going away. And finally, Gurman notes that Apple is planning a redesign for the MacBook Air, but it won't be coming until long after the updated MacBook Pro models debut. Don't know what long after means. It was Ming-Chi Kuo who said this was going to happen in the third quarter. Gurman doesn't seem to have said when this year, just sometime this year. I'll be honest, third quarter seems pretty far off. I mean, they're doing this transition, and that's based on how quickly they did the Intel transition. They had said that it was going to take 2 years to do the Intel transition. I think it took between a year and a half. To say that they, introduced these things last year, and then, they didn't introduce them last year. Yeah, introduced them last year, in November of last year, to say it's going to be almost another year. Although I guess the third quarter is June to September. So I don't know, maybe. I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm saying it just feels like a long time. Let's get to your feedback on it. because that was the other thing. Earlier today, I took to Twitter to ask people to send me their feedback, either email or hit me up on Twitter with their thoughts, and got a few people having actually an interesting conversation on their own on Twitter. David says, put at least one USB 3.0 port, an HDMI port, and keep the headphone port, is what he wants. Hard to imagine them getting rid of the headphone port, but they've done it before on other devices, so I guess it's possible. So I'm with you on that. Julian says, what about a wireless charging pad for MacBook instead of the USB-C? But that was followed by a winky smiley face, so I'm not sure he was serious about that. It's kind of funny, though, because I was talking to another friend of mine who was like, oh, that'd be awesome. And all I can think about is, no. I'm not sure we're there yet, and I just worry about that heat, and I also worry about the waves, the waves I'm talking about, messing with your other electronics and giving you cancer, and screwing with your pacemaker. Probably that kind of thing will happen one day, right? I mean, there are ways to whatever. I feel like that might be too soon, but you know what? More power to you. Dream big. That's what I say. Julian also wonders about bringing back an 11-inch MacBook Air, which is interesting because Gurman actually said that as well. Not the 11-inch MacBook Air, but he said they're going to redesign the MacBook Air. So there you go. Matthew was on Twitter saying that he thinks that MacBook Air thing will not happen. He was responding actually to what Julian had said. He doesn't think that'll happen because it's too close to the iPad Pro. He does have other thoughts, though, saying, please, for the love of all things holy, don't change the charging port again. Leave it USB-C. That said, he is with David on putting back at least one USB 3 port, saying that would solve a lot of issues in his office. So there you go. A different David actually did send me an email saying, it's a bit lengthy, saying I've got a 15-inch 2016 MacBook Pro, one of the first ones with a touch bar and the 4 USB-C ports. He hates the virtual escape key. I'm with you on that. I like the touch bar. I hate the virtual escape key. I hate the virtual escape key on the touch bar, so very pleased that the recent ones returned to the physical escape key. I think the newer keyboards also correctly set up and spaced out the arrow keys. To be fair, all manufacturers went silly with the squished format. Well, they were all following Apple, weren't they? Probably. Here's what he's thinking about for the next Macs. A return to MagSafe, yes, big tick there, he says. Removal of the touch bar. I think the touch bar is pretty cool with the escape key being physical. So he actually wants to see that stay. More ports? Yes, he's the one who said, I've got all the USB-C dongles now. What more ports could there be? Add a USB that's not USB-C. Add an SD card slot. Ooh, that would be cool. Add speculative new kind of port. Well, that might be cool. Depends on what it is, I suppose. He likes the idea of the flat edge design if it gets him more screen real estate. Apple Silicon, he says, because duh. And finally, function keys. You either get physical keys or touch bar. And he actually wants to keep the touch bar. Regardless of touch bar, this is the new machine I'll be holding out for, he says. No doubt it will be build to order, as I want a 1 terabyte hard drive or SSD as a minimum, and 16 gigabytes or 32 gigabytes of RAM. So says David. And I appreciate his feedback. Nobody went to one of the first things that I went to. I want a better camera. I want a better camera. Now, I understand with the M processors or with the M series processors, the software is supposed to make it almost as good as a better camera. But hey, here's an idea. How about a hardware and the software solution that gives me both? And I understand the top, the lid of the MacBook Pro right now is so very thin, it might be hard to put a better camera in there. But if we're backing away from the you can never be too thin thing, maybe a better camera. Also, what I personally would like would be an easy analog audio input. But, that's because I'm an audio guy. There are ways around that. In fact, I nearly yesterday ordered from Amazon, and then I realized I don't actually need it. I like working analog, and I've got an analog board that I've never been able to figure out how to get into this computer. It turns out what I needed was $10 and 5 minutes on Amazon because they have a USB-C to RCA adapter. And I'm such a nerd. I'm an audio nerd. But yeah, they have that. And so I can actually, mix two microphones into the one thing. Of course, the problem now is all my microphones are USB. But I think I still have, you know what? That actually goes to something that I meant to talk about. We all want the Mac we want, right? I actually found myself daydreaming. I was like, yeah, Apple could build that. And they could do this thing and they could call it the MacBook Sound Machine. And then I realized, first of all, that sounds like a disco band. But second, that's good for like 10 people. Better to find solutions, that everybody can, get to the computer that they want to get to. Thinking about it, I even almost thought, what I could do? I could get a Mac Mini. I could get a Mac Mini because it has the audio input and the audio output. And it turns out, no, it doesn't. Not the way it used to anyway. So I guess maybe I could go with an iMac, or I could buy a $10 cord from Amazon or Guitar Center, if those are still things. Anyway, if anybody has any other ideas, I would love to hear what they are. I would be more than happy to do more feedback on this. Because isn't it fun to talk about something that doesn't involve social upheaval? Isn't it fun to talk about, oh yeah, let's imagine a thing that we could do and have and play with and create with and all that. So if you have other things you would like to see, you can either leave a comment on this video or you can send me an email, info@macosken.com, info@macosken.com. Should let you know too, really quickly, though we do this at the same time every day, I also send out a reminder. So if you're not following me on Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter. It's just at macosken, MACOSKEN, at macosken to follow me there. Of course, the other way you can be reminded is subscribe on YouTube, and then hit the thing to be notified. There's a little bell. Maybe hit the little bell to be notified. YouTube will tell you when I schedule something and when it goes live and all that stuff. It's not just me. It'll do that for other people too. Be funny if I had that kind of pull. Got a really cool email coming up in just a moment about Apple Car. A really cool email coming up about Apple Car from Merrill. Before we get to that, though, I want to remind you about another show I do. I mentioned that Peter Cohen and I talked earlier this week on In a Few Minutes about Apple Car. We talked about a lot of stuff this week. We talked about services. We talked about the Parler Parlay thing. We talked about a lot of stuff. We talked about Windows 7. Believe it or not. And of course, it's Friday today, so Peter Cohen spun the wheel of stuff. Didst spin the wheel of stuff. If you want to know what that's about and hear what his answers were, search for the show In a Few Minutes. You can either find that here on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/KenRay, or subscribe wherever you get podcasts. And listen till your ears can't take it no more. Super cool email about Apple Car. This comes from Merrill, who I think must have been listening to In a Few Minutes this week. Because Merrill begins, you guys have been talking about the Apple Car all week, and something struck me when you were talking about that, what Apple would do, where they could enter the market and solve a problem that nobody else has. First of all, Merrill says Apple is never going to build a car any more than they were going to build a TV. Okay, that's interesting because they were going to build a TV. And then they decided not to. We believe they're building cars, but they're prototype. Whether they actually release a car, it's still an open question. I know right now everybody's thinking, yeah, they're going to build a car. They're going to release a car. Okay. I look forward to seeing what happens. In the meantime, here's Merrill's thing that kind of mess with my head in a good way. One thought I had was autonomous driving, but from an Apple perspective. They have billions of little GPS devices that everyone carries around with them everywhere they go. They must have gobs of data on everything moving around. They can tell when you're riding in a car or when you're driving the car, riding on a bike, walking down the street, crossing at a crosswalk. What if you got into a car, plugged in your phone, and it's the phone that is the device that gives the car its autonomy. It has GPS, it has the intelligence built in, it has machine learning. Voila, Apple branded autonomy. Their first step is Apple CarPlay. Auto manufacturers would just need to build the drive-by-wire system to interface with Apple autonomy. So what if you already own the brain of an Apple car? Now, here's the thing. I don't know that today's iPhones are up for that, but we're not talking about today's iPhones anyway. We're talking a little bit further in the future, right? I remember when Apple showed off Anki, or when Apple invited Anki up to stage to show off the Overdrive, which was their toy car racing thing. And listen, I understand that a toy car racing thing is not the same as a car. But the thing that blew my mind then was they had these 3 cars going around on this track, but the cars were just motors. The cars were just reacting to what was on the phone, and the phone, like 5 years ago, was running all 3 of those at the same time, running 3 different processes, driving processes, and running honestly 3 different personalities for each car, and making each one do its thing. And that was 5 years ago. And I understand we're talking about, magnitudes of difference. And I'm not sure I'm using that term right. We're talking about huge differences between, an actual car that somebody's going to get into and 3 toy cars going around. But I mean, that's just such an incredible idea. The only thing is you would need, because I assume it wouldn't just be for Apple, you would need basically the same kind of thing that we have right now with car entertainment systems, where I think you might be able to get CarPlay as an option on a car at this point. But really what happens now is, as I understand it, and I guess I know this from having bought a stereo for my beater car a few years ago, you buy a car that's compatible with, CarPlay or Google Auto, whatever that's called, Google Drive. I can't remember, whatever it's called. Anyway, it's not married to one platform. So what if you had a way that you could slot in whatever smartphone? Of course, you would need to have, the same connectors for everybody at that point. The idea just blew me away. So there you go. What if you've already got the key to Apple Car? And what if the car just becomes the world's biggest dock for your phone? I thought that idea was amazing. What if it's an iPad? That's nuts. It's just a wonderful idea. I love the idea. I love the way it's sort of it took the idea and turned it kind of on its head in a way that I haven't heard anybody else do. So points to Merrill, whose email actually went on. Also, I recently heard that Apple thinks we won't have phones in 10 years. I'm not sure I believe that either, except to say that what we have in 10 years might not resemble a phone. I do believe that we'll have way more powerful devices that we still carry around and that do a lot more than they do today. This is one of those things. Merrill is hurting my head in a wonderful, wonderful way. You can see ways, right, that the augmented reality glasses that Apple is supposedly working on could eventually replace the phone, could eventually replace the computer, could replace, so much stuff. Yeah, to say that we're not going to have a phone, I mean, honestly, if you showed me an iPhone, if you showed me 20 years ago an iPhone, I would think that you no longer have a phone. You've got something completely different. We just called it iPhone because it was, sort of similar in form factor and did some of the same stuff. When's the last time you made a call on your phone? Probably more now, due to hashtag these uncertain times, but there's a difference there as far as what the words mean, what the terminology means, I think. But yeah, I'm totally into that idea, and I'm totally into this email. And I'm totally out of time. If you're in the chat room, please stay in the chat room. I will be by there momentarily. If you're not in the chat room, we would love it if you joined us. Monday through Friday, 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern. Lots of people here hanging out. And then I go and hang out after the show. We got macOS Ken Monday. We've got in a few minutes again Monday. We got this again Monday afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for spending this part of your week with me. And I will talk to you soon. It is so much fun when it's fun. You know, it's fun when it's fun. That's why they call it fun. I'm pretty sure. Plus, I got my coffee. Oh, darn it. And I forgot to mention the 27-inch MacBook Pro idea. It was written there, but it wasn't on my thing. All right. I'm going way back up there to where I'm hoping somebody marked. They did. You people are awesome. Thank you, John. It looks like Ryan showed up. Amy also showed up. Hello to both of you. What? You're still running Snow Leopard? Nate? Really? Far out. You're talking, I assume, about the 17-inch MacBook Pro. Hello, Ronald, by the way. Quite a while ago. There we are. Let's see. It does have to do with the chair. Somebody said the camera angle looks different. It does have to do with the chair. Yeah. I'm not sure about this chair, honestly. Well, that didn't do anything. Where are we? John says he has an original Mac Plus toaster that's destined to be a fish tank. Nate says he has lots of Mac junk waiting to be turned into something else. I think that's true of all of us, or a lot of us anyway. Brian says it's different to think of how current models could be improved form factor wise, but then as soon as you get to look at the new one, the old one looks immediately outdated. I can see that. Oh, difficult, not different. Yeah, I mean, being freed from having to be the thinnest thing on the planet is not necessarily the worst idea. That's the biggest form factor change I could see. That and, colors. Because I've got a space gray MacBook Pro, and I can barely tell the difference between this one and the silver one. And I don't, I'm not saying, don't go iPhone 5C necessarily. Although the thing is, I'm nowhere near buying another computer. I'm excited about all these changes everybody's talking about. It's going to be years before I upgrade my Mac, unless I'm forced into it somehow. Peter and I talked about this week as well. Unless, the move to Apple Silicon makes it difficult to keep using your MacBook or your MacBook Pro or your Intel-based Mac. The thing is, Apple has already said that they're going to support them for years to come, which I think they have to do because they have businesses that are buying them. And that would really, cheese off the businesses who just spent hundreds of thousands of dollars or more on your computers. You don't want Dell being able to come in and say, wow, we never would have left you in a lurch like that. Think of us next time. Nobody wants to live in that world. I don't remember the front edge that cuts your hand when you work, Eugene. Eugene says he's fine with changing and making the flatter edges as long as they don't bring back the front edge that cuts your hand when you work. All you do is just get like a file. Nate says maybe the touch bar will be replaced by a touch screen. Are you talking about the display or are you talking about something else that would go where the touch bar is? I'm curious. Oh, well, cool, Nate. Yeah, because I didn't talk about it either. Sorry, Nate says he hasn't seen any of the news today. It's been one of those. This is the first he's hearing about it, I assume, about the new MacBook things. I didn't actually talk about it on Mac OS Ken because it's all just rumor. And I thought it would be fun to talk about something here that I hadn't talked about already. So there we go. Eugene says MagSafe will be a big magnetic ring over the Apple logo on the back screen, compatible with iPhone MagSafe. It's kind of a funny idea. And then it'll look like you have like a ring on your computer, like you used it as a coaster, or that you used it without a coaster, maybe. Eugene says then you can have a wallet on your MacBook, and that's true. You can also just put your MacBook on the dashboard when you go driving. Then you look like a cop. Oh, hello, Frank. Glad you could make it. Frank said 20 minutes ago that he's sorry he was late. Well, I'm sorry I'm late telling you hello, Frank. So you're even. Ronald was saying, and I didn't read everything that he said out loud, but Ronald was saying that he just got his 2013 MacBook, I think Pro, repaired. He hopes, because he's had a lot of problems with it. Best of luck. Hope it went well. Adam says he can't see Apple ditching USB-C. Yeah, well, it'd be okay with me if they did, I think. Ooh, speaking of which, I need to plug in power. Nate does not have a USB-C Mac yet. He's got a load of clients with the new M1 Max, and he's now remembering to specify good dongles for all of the ports that they may need. Current favorite is one of the anchors. There you go. Yeah. So people are coming to you, though, when they're doing their buying. That's the thing. I assume that the person who just walks into the Apple store, well, nobody's walking into Apple stores right now. Well, I guess they are in some places. I don't know. Where else are we? A different Matthew, I think, says, remember when Apple licensed their OS to other PC makers? That was kind of cool. So maybe they will sell a car OS that other companies with their own in-dash unit. That's been the debate, right? Katie Huberty said recently that she thinks Apple works best when Apple works alone. So, I mean, while somebody like Magna or something like that might build the car, it won't be like, Hyundai and Apple get together or Volkswagen and Apple get together. Still, other people say that they think that is the way it's going to go. I mean, it's a whole new thing. So it's tough to say. I will say, yeah, maybe I won't. If it's going to be an Apple car, then it feels like it needs to be an Apple car by Apple, because otherwise it looks like Apple couldn't do what Tesla could. If, on the other hand, it is an operating system that's available to everyone, that's kind of a different thing. I mean, who knows? And we have between 3 and 8 years to guess, depending on who's right about when it's going to happen. Roger says his phone spontaneously rebooted this morning. Imagine that at 65 miles per hour while it's driving your car. Okay. Look, I'm not saying there aren't bugs. Here's the thing, though. Your phone wasn't supposed to reboot going 65 miles per hour. I mean, you're pretty much talking about any computer at that point, right? Your car could do that. Or what was that thing where they somebody hacked and took over a Tesla earlier this year? No, well, last year, because it was 2020. Can't remember if they actually took it over or just turned it off. Wow. Wow. If the self-driving car, this is John, if the self-driving car becomes the norm and sharing ownership also becomes mainstream, I think the interior is going to need lots of love, too many places to lose stuff. It's a design opportunity. I have wondered about that. Like, it would be interesting actually to know how much stuff Uber drivers or Lyft drivers find in their cars at the end of the day. Because at least there you got a guy, right? Or a gal. At least there you've got a person who's like, yeah, I found this thing. If you leave stuff in the back of a self-driven Apple car, that pretty much belongs to the next person in the self-driven Apple car, right? Not accusing that person of anything, but hey, I found $10. Hey, I found the laptop. I know there are other ways. I'm being a little ridiculous there. Other Matthew says, can't see the phone being the brains of the car, maybe an interface though. Yeah, but could you have seen the phone being what it is today 10 years ago? I can't see today's phone doing that, but what about 3 years from now or 4 when we're down to the 3 nanometer processor and Siri's gotten 1,000 times better and all that stuff? I mean, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I just think it's an interesting possibility. Brian says, let's fast forward to a few hundred years. What ports are they using on Star Trek? Just use those ports and we'll already be plugged into the future. Well, it's an interesting idea. And Bill asks, like the Borg ones? Paul says, I think the biggest Apple service would be designed by Apple. That is designing things that other people build. I'm not sure how that's a service. It's an interesting idea, but I'm not sure how it would work exactly. Eugene says maybe the phone won't be the brains, but the secure enclave might store the important information so that a share card isn't a privacy issue. He says it's a half-baked idea, but it's an interesting idea, especially if you're going to be sharing this stuff. You do need to worry more about the security side, I think. From your mouth to whatever cybernetic being's ears, John. John says when Ken becomes a synthetic human, cars and ports will be irrelevant. He'll be plugged in all the time and no need to travel. Well, good, because I can't travel anyway, so yay! Hey, Michael's watching Discovery. A badge is in Star Trek Discovery that projects an interface. That's what the glasses are for, I think. Not these, obviously. Right. And now I think we have hit the end of the chat, except people are adding stuff. An iPhone skimmer for rental cars? Right. I'm so glad you guys are here. Thank you. I had a tremendous amount of fun this afternoon. I hope you did too. We should do it again sometime. Maybe, I don't know, 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern next Monday. I'm gonna go turn this into a show, and then I'm gonna unplug for easily 4 hours, maybe 5. Thanks, guys. I'll talk to you soon.